Hi everyone, I'm back again. I got a couple of requests on how I do my epoxy on my Father's Day hammer keychains, and so I just wanted to take a little bit of time to explain my process. So this is the stuff that you're going to need. You're going to need your hammer blank or whatever kind of blank that you're doing. Mine's already ready to go to have the decal put on and cut out, so I'll show you how to put that on in just a second. You'll need your epoxy. I use the one from Michaels, the Amazing Clear Cast, in the blue box. Do not get the purple. That's not the right one. This one's the one that everyone uses. This one is also the one that is FDA compliant. So a lot of people use this epoxy on their tumblers and stuff like that if they're making them. In the box you will get part A and you will also get part B. It also comes with measuring cups and it comes with a popsicle stick. Now I do not use the measuring cups that it comes with. I actually use these disposable mouthwash cups that you can get at like the dollar store. I also put the bottle stoppers in that you can get from a pharmacy, or you can buy them online on Amazon. This one's actually a little too large for the bottle and I had thrown my other one away, so I'm going one without the bottle stopper and then one with the bottle stopper. Now I also use, this is what it looks like with the bottle stopper. I also use syringes, medicine dosing syringes. You can get these also at the pharmacy, and then you can also buy them online. I also mark mine A and B because if you leave the liquid left in there once you're done measuring, as long as it's not mixed with the other part, it will stay just the liquid. It will not harden, so you don't actually have to rinse this out or anything once you've done your epoxy. So here's the one I marked part A. Sorry, my phone just will not stay. Give me just a second. Let's try this again. You will also need a lighter, a heat gun, or a spray bottle of alcohol. This is when you've already epoxied the blank and you have air bubbles. This is a step where it will take those air bubbles out. I have not personally myself tried using the alcohol or the heat gun. I've only always had my lighter and it works pretty great for myself, but you can choose whatever works best for you. You'll also need your paintbrush. I got this in a pack of, I don't know, maybe 5 paintbrushes from AC Moore a long time ago, and it's just a cheap paintbrush, cheap bristles. This is what I use to smooth out my, or spread out my epoxy onto the keychain blank. Now you can see my bristles are already really hard and they don't move, and this is because I've already epoxied with this brush before, so that makes it even more perfect to use. Once I'm done with the epoxy, I just take a wipey or a paper towel and just wipe the excess epoxy off. I don't wash it or anything like that because I want it to stay hard. A lot of people use popsicle sticks to spread their epoxy on, but because these are super tiny, it's much better with a smaller surface. So I'm going to show you how to do the clear epoxy on these, and then I also just wanted to take a minute to show you how to do epoxy mixed with glitter and show you how that turns out. This is the side with vinyl. It's white vinyl on here, and then I did the alcohol ink on top of the vinyl and then placed my vinyl decal. But this side here, I just did the the alcohol ink directly onto the clear blank, and then once it dried, I did epoxy mixed with glitter in your measuring cup and then poured that on, so it kind of was a little bit faster giving that sparkle than doing the ones like this that you Mod Podge, glitter Mod Podge. So it just gives it a tiny little different effect. Alright, so we're just going to go ahead and get started. So also for the glitter one, you will need any color glitter that you want. Tonight I'm going to use white. So let me just move the camera down here so you can see what I'm doing, and I hope that it doesn't fall. Alright, so you just want to make sure that your decal is on your transfer tape. You pull that off, and you want to try to align it as best you can. So there, I'm gonna not one of my hammers has come out exactly the same. I love how each one is completely different on the front and the back. So this is the front, and then I'm going to epoxy the back. So you can just see that the color in the handles, or the handle wood grain, is different, and I just love it because it looks more natural to me. Alright, so once that's on, I'm just going to make sure it comes off. Alright, so now it is ready to epoxy. And make sure there's no air bubbles again. Alright, so let's mix this epoxy. You want to make sure you do equal parts of A and B. If you do not have equal parts of A and B, it will not dry hard, 100% hard. It will still be kind of tacky, so you want to make sure that you measure correctly. So I'm going to start out with part A, and I'm just going to use my dosing syringe. I'm going to start out with 5 mLs because I have a couple keychains here that I want to do, and a little bit goes a long way. I'm just going to stick this in here and grab 5 mLs. So I have my 5 mLs of part A, and I'm just going to squirt that right in there. You want to make sure the inside of your cup is clean from any debris or any little particles, because it will get inside of your epoxy. I also have on my workspace here, I have paper down. I'm actually using the waxy side of freezer paper because I don't have a silicone mat yet, and I do know that silicone mat would be the best, because if you do have anything spilling onto your surface, it's easy to pull off of the silicone mat. It's actually not that bad coming off of this waxy side of freezer paper either. But you want to make sure that you cover your surface, because if you do have anything spill, it's not the best. So this is how we measure for part B, and I try not to get as many bubbles in there, but sometimes it's hard. Sometimes if you squeeze while you're pulling it out, you don't get as many bubbles. Alright. So again, 5 mLs, and this is part B. So you're just going to squeeze that in there. And then you're going to take your popsicle stick and mix it up until you don't see any white, cloudy liquid in there. And you want to be sure to scrape the sides and scrape the bottom of whatever you're mixing it into, just to be sure that you're really mixing it up well. So, I know you can't really see the color, but so when you mix it up, that is what creates the bubbles. And on the package, it does say once you've mixed it to let it sit for at least 3 minutes, and it will raise your bubbles to the surface, and sometimes it will get rid of your bubbles. If you start slow, oh, sorry, this phone stand. Let me fix this here. I hope it doesn't do this while I'm putting the epoxy on. Fix this. Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay. Anyway, so if you mix it and let it sit for about 3 minutes, it should get rid of some of your air bubbles that's in the epoxy. So I'm just gonna scrape this off, and I'm just gonna sit this to the side because I don't need it right now. So let that sit for a minute. And I'm gonna start out with the one that I did the vinyl on. I'm just trying to make sure that my phone does not fall, so give me just another minute. Okay. Alright, I really hope this stays. I'm so sorry if it falls again, because I'm working with a new stand that I just got, and it's not working out so well. Okay. So it hasn't been exactly 3 minutes, but I'm used to using it, so I don't know if you can kind of see it in there. It's clear. It's got a couple little bubbles in there, but I can work with that. So typically for my bigger keychains, the acrylic blanks like this one, I would just take the cup and just pour some out. But because these are really small, I actually found that if I kind of scoop it out onto the blank, it works a lot better for me. So I just take some of my epoxy and I kind of just scoop it and add a little bit at a time. And then I take it and work my way around the blank with it. A little goes a long way, so you want to start off with a little bit, and you can always add more if you need to add more, but it's very hard to take some away if you add too much. Excuse me 1 second. Excuse me. So I just make sure that I'm pushing the epoxy to the sides. Sorry guys, there's a tickle in my throat. so I'm going to let that sit for a minute, and then I'm going to use the lighter. So give me 1 second, I'll be right back while that sits. If you let it sit for a minute, it kind of brings the bubbles to the surface so you can get rid of them faster with the lighter. Alright, so if you can see, you see all the little bubbles, air bubbles in there. I'm just going to take my lighter that I got from the Dollar Tree. You can get it from wherever you want. And I'm just going to go over top of it and get rid of all the air bubbles that I see. Now again, the package does say that you can spritz alcohol on top and it will pop the bubbles as well. Again, I have not tried that, but other people that I have seen had. Alright, so I'm just going to add a little bit more on the back part here. And then I'm just going to go over one more time with the lighter. Make sure I get any bubbles that I see. And that is that. There's not much to it once you actually get that in there. So then I can move on. I'll do another one. I'm just going to slide this over. I'm going to do the back side of one that I already epoxied. You also want to make sure that you're doing it on a level surface, because if not, you're going to get epoxy more on one side of the blank than the other side, or that's when you really get epoxy spilling over. With the one I did just a minute ago, if you do get epoxy that spills over, it's not that big of a deal because I still have the brown paper backing on the other side, and usually if you have that and it spills over, it's pretty easy to get it off as soon as you peel the backing off. Even if the backing wasn't on there, most of the time you could peel it off. If not, then the only way to get it off is to sand it down and do another thin layer of epoxy to smooth out where you sand it. So let's do another one here. So again, I'm just going to dip my paintbrush in. I'm going to add a little bit at a time because I definitely don't want any to go over on this one, although I just got some over there. But that's not a big deal. I can get that off. Now, if you do get some on the side, you want to take a paper towel or a wipey or something like that to get it off if you're not finished doing it yet. So I'm just going to wipe this off really quick. Okay. And not that big of a deal. And it didn't get onto the other side. Alright, so I'm just going to pull this around . And what I'm really trying to do is make sure I really get all the edges before I worry about how much is in the middle. Epoxy is a natural leveling liquid. So again, if you have a level surface and you smooth it out, it will level itself on whatever you're putting the epoxy on. So I'm just kind of pulling from the middle where I added the epoxy, and I'm just again making sure I get all of the sides here. So now I'm going to just dip it in and add a little bit more. I find doing it with the paintbrush, you have way more control than with the popsicle stick. Most videos I have seen, most people use just the popsicle stick. And you want to try to be really careful around the key ring hole, because that's where most people tend to get a lot of spillage into, or overflow if you want to call it. So I barely get around there, but I make sure to kind of get all the edges. So that looks good to me. And then again, if you see all the air bubbles in there, we want to get those out. Alright, I don't see any more air bubbles, but I'll come back and check on them in a minute after they've sat for a few minutes, because, you know, once they're sitting, the bubbles will rise to the top, and then you could just take it again. So I'm just going to move that over. And now I just want to show you how to epoxy with adding glitter. While I'm at it. So I'm just taking my white glitter. You can take any color glitter you want. Add a little bit at a time. Too much glitter at one time, it's hard to control. So I'm just gonna sprinkle that in there. I think that's enough for me. So you see my epoxy has the glitter. I'm just gonna take my popsicle stick and stir it up. To make sure it's well mixed and incorporated with all the glitter that I just poured in there. Alright, so this one I'm just going to pour directly on there, and then I'm gonna spread it out. It doesn't look like much, but a little bit goes a long way again, and I'd rather start out with a little bit than too much. So I'm just gonna take my paintbrush and pull it to the edges. Making sure I hit all around the edges because I want to make sure my edges are sealed. And again, be very careful around the key ring hole. I'm just going to add a little bit more here. And you can already see how much glitter's in there and how pretty it looks already. And you see again how my bristles aren't moving while I'm moving it around. It's because the epoxy already has been on this paintbrush and has already dried completely, making it hard so the bristles won't move, which makes it the perfect tool for epoxy that I like. I have seen these little things on Amazon that's actually a little silicone tip. I don't know what they're called, but somebody had posted it in one of the videos, in one of the posts about doing keychains, so you might be able to find it on the Facebook page somewhere. So all of my sides have been touched with epoxy. I'm just adding a little bit here just so it can have enough to level out without any small or thin sides. I'm just gonna move some of the glitter around. And I don't see any sides without epoxy. I really want to make sure my tips, any sharp pointy ends, are hit with the epoxy twice, because it usually tends to pull away from those sharp little smaller edges. Alright, so I'm just gonna take my lighter, and sometimes it's really hard to see any air bubbles, so you still want to make sure you go over it with a lighter because it will pop them, and once you're going over it with the lighter or whichever you're using, you can actually see them popping. And there you have that one. Super pretty. And not too much glitter, because once you glitter one of these, it's all glitter. But I like with adding the epoxy to the glitter to the epoxy, it gives it a subtle glitter effect. Well, thank you guys for watching. Sorry this is such a long video. Sorry that my phone stand didn't want to cooperate a couple of times there. Leave me some feedback on the video, please. And if you have any other questions, feel free to message me or comment on the video below. And I also just wanted to show you without any glitter or anything like that, you can do the alcohol ink and leave it blank and just epoxy the one side. This other side I did not epoxy. So when it dries, it looks super pretty. Alright, thank you guys. Have a good night.